and welcome to the Caregiving Essentials webinar series. It's a very beautiful, gorgeous day here in the Hamilton area. So hopefully where you are tuning in from, it's also a nice sunny day. My name is Christine Kennedy, and on behalf of the Office of Alumni Engagement and McMaster University's Continuing Education, I'd like to thank you for joining us for today's webinar, The Home Care Staffing Crisis, Managing Care at Home Without Help. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge that the land on which we reside, I'm up here in Ancaster, I'm working from home today, which is very close to McMaster and also the Six Nations. We want to recognize that McMaster University acknowledges that it is located on the traditional territories of the Mississauga and Haudenosaunee Nations and within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Before we begin, we always sort of start off our webinars with a little housekeeping. First, if you have a question or comment, please feel free to open your chat and put that in the chat. You can also put it in the Q&A. So type whatever you want to type in, but please be mindful that whatever you type in, others can see. So please don't put too much personal information because others in this webinar will also see that. If you'd like to have the closed captioning option available, please just click on that feature to activate it. I think it's on the top of your screen and there's a little button and you can click it to activate it and you'll see the live transcript. As a reminder, the webinar today is being recorded and we will send out a link hopefully by Friday or Monday at the latest with this talk. So if you have to leave early or if you have a friend that really wanted to see this and they couldn't make it, feel free to send them that link once you get it in about a week's time. Also, we've started something new. We started this last month and it was a resounding success. If you'd like to stay on after sort of the formal part, Donna and Sarah are going to chat and then, we have Q&A throughout that. But if you wanted to stay on after sort of the formal presentation in an hour, feel free to stay on and talk to Donna through the chat. Maybe you have some more personal questions you want to ask. Maybe you want to chat with other people, again, only through the chat, but hear from other people. We're sort of extending like an informal coffee chat with Donna. So what we'll do is we'll put a slide up after this presentation. We'll put some music in. That's the end of the formal part. You can drop off. It won't be recorded. The sort of informal part won't be recorded. Maybe you want to grab a quick drink of water and then you can come back on and Donna will take some more questions and interact with the audience. And finally, we are so excited. So this webinar series is sort of the idea that we have this Caregiving Essentials course, and the webinar series is sort of a supplement to the Essentials course. And we are so excited that we're going to kick off the Essentials course ends in August, and then it's going to start up again in October. And to kick off the beginning of the course, we are going to have Globe and Mail columnist Andre Picard. Many of you know he is a fantastic healthcare sort of commentator. We've had him before do webinars for McMaster, and we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people participating. So mark in your calendars, you will get emails about this, but mark in your calendars, Thursday, September 28th, 7 p.m. Andre is going to be doing a webinar on who cares about caregiving in Canada. Andre Picard reflects on the future of healthcare through a family lens. So feel free to let people know about that. You'll get lots of information, I think, in the chat. Liv is putting in how you can register for that. Yes, exciting. Okay, but that's in the future. That's for a couple more months. Let's get back to today. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our two speakers. Donna will be hosting. Many of you know Donna Thompson is the facilitator of the Caregiving Essentials webinar series and is a caregiver herself, educator, and author. She has written 2 best-selling books on caregiving, including The Unexpected Journey of Caring, The Transformation of Loved One to Caregiver. Donna also facilitates our free online courses for caregivers, Caregiving Essentials, and is a co-designer and co-instructor of the Family Engagement and Research course, both of which are here at McMaster. So joining Donna today is Sarah Kaplan. So she's a Master of Social Work, retired. She is a was a healthcare professional and is currently a spousal caregiver. Before retiring to be a full-time caregiver, Sarah managed a medical forensic program, that sounds super exciting, led change projects focusing on caregiving inclusion in healthcare, new mental health programs, and community strategic alliances. Currently, she spends time writing about the health impact of caregiving with a special interest in post-traumatic stress disorder. So this sounds very exciting to have the two of you together. Thanks for joining us. Donna, I'll hand it over to you for the conversation.
Oh, thank you so much, Christine. I am just delighted to have you here today, Sarah, and to be able to talk to you about a really hot topic and one that isn't discussed very often, I don't think. It's this idea that we are in the midst of a staffing crisis in home and community care. And the burden of care is increasing day by day, as we know, with Canadian caregivers. And so we're going to be talking about where we are today, using your life experience as an example. And then we're going to begin to strategize about how does one survive this? How do families manage? How do we keep our mental health? How do we look for the pitfalls, be aware of what goes wrong when we don't have enough help to help us at home? So we will also be dipping into a little bit about advocacy and trying to get more help, actually, too. So that's going to be our conversation today. But I want to begin, Sarah, by asking you to tell us about yourself. How did you begin your own caregiving journey? And maybe you can give us a little picture of you as a professional before you became a full-time caregiver as well.
Okay, well, thank you, first of all, for inviting me. This is a wonderful opportunity. I wish I could see all those beautiful faces out there, but I'm just going to imagine them. And please laugh at all my jokes. I can't see you, but I'm going to trust that you are. So I moved actually to Montreal from Saskatchewan, wanting to improve my French, and did my social work degrees there, and then had twin girls and wanted to live in the country. So I ended up starting a new program in Cornwall that was the medical forensic program, treating individuals and providing services to people who are victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. And so my first caregiving experience actually happened just after my children were quite young, and suddenly my husband lost the use of his kidneys. So I was a caregiver, but he was still managing a lot of things on his own. So it was sort of intermittent, and we handled things. And then everything hit the fan in 2017, where he ended up having a very serious infectious disease to his brain that almost killed him. And he ended up with permanent brain damage, as well as chronic kidney disease and a bunch of other things. And so suddenly, like in a second, I became a full-time caregiver while I was working full-time. Now, luckily, my children at that time were older and had already left the home. So managing the work full-time and taking care of him, and the long transition from getting home care following discharge. That's, of course, one of the challenges, is to try to have that be seamless, which doesn't happen too often. So that's where the creativity comes in. And you know how they always say desperate times really cause you to be creative? When you don't have another choice, you have got to, like, I had to be at work. And and then, of course, the pandemic hit not so long after that. So I had to be at work. I worked in a hospital. And so I had to figure out things so that I could be at work, because of my husband's brain injury. He cannot be alone for much more than maybe an hour or so. And at that time, earlier on, not at all.
Gee whiz. Wow. Well, that's sort of incredible, as you say, the competing needs to be in two places at once. I mean, I think a lot of us feel this way, who are, in the trenches of caring. But how did you manage that?
All right. So, we'll fast forward through the journey of absolute insanity because it was very, very difficult, for sure. So it comes in stages. So the first thing I was trying to fight for, so this is back in 2017, I'm trying to fight for home care because he cannot take a bath, he can't do anything. And my hospital is, of course, wanting me to come back to work. I can't leave him alone. So I didn't also realize the extent of the brain damage. Nobody did. There's no test to say, okay, your person can do this, they can do that. It's very difficult. You sort of find out the hard way. And so I was trying to, only leave him alone when I thought he would sleep, but I did have to leave him alone. And one time there was almost a fatal accident where he fell down some stairs and ended up in the emerge again. And the emergency doctor was so amazing. She was so fed up with the fact that we did not have home care. It's now 8 months from his initial discharge when everything had happened to him, that there was nothing, that she put somebody on it. And by the end of that day, I had a phone call. So that is one of the things is having the right person advocate for you and being quite vocal everywhere you can that I don't have home care yet. It was unfortunate that my husband almost had to die a second time. And this is not about blaming anybody. It's not that anyone is withholding home care. We have a very challenging system, and we have a lot of systems that don't work together the way, in an optimal way. I'm hoping that's going to change. So even after the doctor got home care to contact me, I still had to wait for an assessment, and then I still had to wait for the actual provision of services. So while that was going on and I was trying to figure out how to work, I was just a mess. And luckily, some people offered. They said, look, my father's at home and he's not well either. So why don't you bring your husband and he can stay with us, a couple hours a week or a half a day a week. And so a lot of informal things. When he was well enough to do something like any kind of activities became like the babysitters. It's unfortunate. There was this amazing person who teaches ceramics, and she has a special interest in people with special needs. So I just said, if anything happens to him, call 911. Really, he should have only been with, someone who's got some kind of expertise in health, but they're not available. I couldn't even find people if I wanted to pay them.
Wow.
So
geez, Sarah, there's so much in what you're saying. The first thing that strikes me about it is that you are a trained professional, retired now, social worker. And this happened to you. Imagine somebody who maybe doesn't have English as a first language or doesn't have a knowledge of the health and social care systems. It's just mind-boggling that this even happened to you. But I think the other thing it demonstrates is that when you're in the thick of extreme caregiving and you're desperate to find solutions quickly, the other thing that I'm hearing you say is that you are making decisions and grabbing at opportunities that you might not have considered acceptable before, like this is a ceramics teacher, it's not a healthcare professional. Is that safe? You know what? I'm going to figure out how we can make this work. We're going to have an emergency plan, but we're going to err on the side of the need for an activity, as opposed to quit your job, or the options become very narrow. And I think we do find ourselves making choices that we couldn't have imagined making in the absence of such pressing need. Don't you think?
Well, and you say it quite elegantly, because it was safer for him to be with someone than to be at home alone. He couldn't be home alone for all kinds of reasons. He was on all kinds of complicated medical stuff. And so you had all these weird sort of medicinal combinations. You had to take this at this time and then not with this one. And there was just no way, you couldn't even put that in a blister pack at that time properly. Some things had to be mixed because he had this infectious disease in his brain that we had to, kill. And so, yeah, it was very hard in those beginning months, but to give hope to people, I don't want people to take away from this that it was always bad. It took a long time to put everything into place, and we'll get to all those steps, but they do come in
Yes.
stages. And I think I saw quickly somebody in the chat said something about
They did.
about the hospital set. Yes. And that's exactly what is supposed to happen. The
Yeah.
sad thing is it's a lottery system. It happens sometimes because that's exactly what did happen. The home care person came to see us in the hospital and everything was supposed to be set up and it wasn't. And that can be due to all kinds of reasons.
Yeah.
The other
Mhm.
thing is with home care is really a medical model around physical health. So when you have someone with brain injury or mental health issues, they're not set up to understand that. It's not that they don't want to, it's not that they don't care. Their assessments don't ask the right questions. Somebody with a brain injury might be able to give themselves a bath, but they can't be home alone for 2 seconds because they're putting bleach in a frying pan to stick it in the oven to clean it. That's a true story. And
Mhm.
luckily it got diverted or this place would have blown up. So, there's a lot of things that happen when you think about home care.
Yeah. The other thing I heard you say too, Sarah, is that many times in discharge, at the point of discharge, because Crystal in the chat is absolutely right. I always tell caregivers, do not leave the hospital without having your home care arrangements in place. Just refuse to leave until you get that. If they tell you, oh, you can apply yourself afterwards, and if you know that you're going to need help, it's obvious, then it's important to
Mhm.
secure that if you can. But even then, like you said, in your experience, it still can sometimes not
Well, all
work.
the paperwork was filled out, the assessments were done.
Yeah.
And so it's just a bit of looking at that process, what happened. Like my role in the hospital in my later years was making changes and looking at processes. So, what happened from the time we filled out the paperwork and we left and 8 months went by, like what actually happened there. And
Yeah.
and that's, and it could be all kinds of things. The other thing that was helpful for us, of course, the pandemic was a terrible thing, and I did have to be at the hospital. Luckily, because my one daughter was in university and the other one was working, and the government was like, everybody was throwing their hands up in the air right away, just saying, okay, everybody go home. So my kids were able to come home for the first couple of weeks. They alternated, and that was very good. And then I had been redeployed. And so once the redeployment was done and I was back in my normal job, I could work from home. And I was so fortunate because I was very lucky. If there are employers out there, managers, this is one of the greatest things that you can do. I am so grateful to my immediate supervisor because she allowed me to continue to work, to continue to be creative, to continue to contribute, but in a way that I could take care of my husband. So I could, and as he, got a little bit better and could be in more activities, the activities replaced the respite care for me. So I would put him in something and then I could be at the office. That's what I had to do. The other thing is I had a housekeeper. I paid for a housekeeper, and that was another form of informal supervision. She was here for 2 hours, I think 2 hours. I think it was at first once a week and then once every 2 weeks. And again, I explained everything to her. If something happens, I'm not expecting anything other than call 911. And that's what you have to do. So the other thing you have to do is, of course, you don't have somebody there all the time. So you've got to put a lot of things in place. So my husband has seizure disorder. So I had to make sure to get one of those alert necklaces. I had to make sure that countertops had things around them so that if he fell, he wouldn't hit himself. So you just do the best you can to set yourself up for success, and you do the best you can. And
Yeah.
even I could be here and something could happen to him. And it's easy
Yes.
for me to say that now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Back then I was a very scared, and in the end, I did have to retire to be able to take care of him, because he can't be alone, and there is nowhere that will there's nowhere or no service other than paying out of pocket to have like full-time care of somebody with a brain injury.
Yeah, gosh. Yes, I think, in terms of complex care and, well, myself included, doing 24-hour awake nursing care at home, um, there's no possibility that people can maintain employment. I'm not sure exactly how people do it if they're person who needs a high level of vigilance and person-centered care, not just technical care, but they need a person. It's very difficult to maintain employment, but there is a lot, as you said, gave some, really talking about the flexibility, working from home, these messages for employers. I do want to talk about the fact that, as I mentioned before, we are in a home and community care staffing crisis right now. A statistic I heard recently was that even in the GTA, over 30% of funded shifts for home care workers are not being filled. So families are, of course, as we know, the care guarantors. You are there. If somebody doesn't show up, you cannot not be there. And so I want to get to, some solutions. And you've touched on some, talking about what kind of help is actually helpful. How can we set ourselves up for success? Activities and informal solutions is one big area, I think, that we don't necessarily think of if we're flung into these circumstances and you think, oh my gosh, I need a trained healthcare professional. But if those people are not available, how do you find these informal?
Here's something. So who's the best to look after somebody if they're not a officially trained healthcare professional? Well, another caregiver, of course. So
Yes.
what I have done this when my children are little, I said, none of us can afford babysitting. So I had started, an informal group. There was a bunch of us and we, would help each other out. So I did that a little bit with other people with caregivers. So my friend where my husband went to stay, whose father wasn't well. So we would come I would come and take care of both her father and my husband, so her and her husband could go and do things. And so I started to do that. That's what we started to do. Other people who are caregivers. I helped someone take care of a fellow who had dementia, and then she helped. So that could be more formalized. The issue is it's so hard for caregivers who are so busy and so depleted to then have to be in a position where they can arrange all those kind of things.
Yeah,
Like
and do it too.
Well,
it's
when you're
extra work.
if you're in an acute, like I would call the first 5 years very acute because my husband was extremely unwell. I could only figure out what I needed to in that second. But then later on, I started to, meet other caregivers and we started to share, caregiving time and it's free. And I would trust my husband with another caregiver in a heartbeat because they don't need to know what to do. All they need to know is to do something. All you have to do is call 911. It's very simple. So, but you have to not be afraid, and caregivers are fearless. Sadly, we've been forced through experience to be that way. But I think that's one thing. And I think, there's just so many possibilities. You think of, I just think if someone had time, and it of course would have to involve caregivers because we can express what we need and how we need it. Like when I think, what would I need? I need more respite. So given the systems that exist, that's not going to happen. How can I get more respite? How can I get more time on my own where he can be safe? Because there isn't anything. Somebody had mentioned something about long-term care. My husband doesn't meet he's too functional. He does not meet, there are day away programs, but they're for dementia and Alzheimer's. And again, that wouldn't be appropriate for him. So, how do you find something for someone who doesn't fit anywhere? So you have to create things. So I create things. I find, so for example, if you have a seniors center, okay, most senior centers are now around 50 and over. So if you do have that, and there's some activities that person can function in, and maybe there's a friend there that goes, you just, there's no one right solution. You just try to keep, I'm always thinking, okay, how can I leverage that? How can I make that work? Oh, like, for example, another thing, I want to spend time with girlfriends. I don't always, I'm not someone who you can say, hey, Sarah, do you want to come out for dinner? So now what I do is I bring my husband with me. You want to date me, you get my husband. But if my friend has a partner, for example, then can they go do something? So I've just been more, I guess, honest about that, saying, I really want to spend time with you, but I can't leave my husband alone. It stresses me out. Can your husband take him downstairs and they go and do whatever? And then we have our own time together. Because one of the things caregivers lose is they lose a lot of their friendships because they're not available anymore. And not everyone is willing to adapt to your new way of being.
No,
but there are many that will. And it's what I learned the most. Someone just said self-care is important. You are so right. And I think one of the most important things about self-care is actually just being honest about how you feel and what you need. It causes me a lot of anxiety to go out and leave my husband alone. And I need to say that now. And then people are and other people can come up with some pretty good ideas.
Yeah. It seems like a simple, obvious thing, and it's not simple and it's not obvious when you're in the thick of it, right? It's hard to be honest, and it's hard to figure out those solutions. It's hard to figure out what you need and also what might be helpful.
We have to consider the context, right? So, when those kind of questions are posed to us, we're sleep deprived. Many of us are suffering, we're traumatized. And so if somebody says to me, like, I think I tweeted this one day, if you had a day to yourself, what would you do? Because so many caregivers would have no clue what to do. Because I used to feel very uncomfortable if I had an hour. I was agitated. I didn't know what to, because most of my time is quite prescribed for me by his care. Now it's better. So now I have some things, but it took a long time. And that's so important, as the caregiver, to protect themselves. You got to protect yourself. You can't be the 24/7 home care.
No, I think you are the embodiment, Sarah, of an old hand, if I can say that, at caregiving. You've been around the block, and there's so much you've learned. You had all that professional knowledge, but then layered on, you have this wealth of big reality check in what the challenges are in real life and finding creative solutions. One time I was talking to a group of caregivers, and we were talking about how do you get a break, and what does a break look like for you and feel like? Like, it's not what somebody has told you is a break. It is when was the last time you felt relaxed and happy? What was happening around you the last time you felt relaxed and happy? And many of this group said, well, it was disability parents, actually, of children with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. And their behaviors can be impulsive and challenging sometimes, and that's part of the developmental disability they have. And and I said, so, tell me about when you were relaxed and happy. And they said, well, I can't relax or be happy if I'm out in public and other people are judging me and judging my child.
Mhm.
So I am most relaxed and happy if I'm hanging out with other families who are like my family.
Mhm.
And so it's like just a slight other version of what you said when you're trading care with other families and trading solutions and creativity. Sometimes just being with somebody who gets it and accepts your husband for putting, of course he's going to put bleach in the frying pan. That's fine. We just clear it up and no big deal, They don't like look at you like you're from outer space. That
No,
is
no.
sometimes enough to feel good.
Well, I know that because I worked on a big project focusing on caregivers of people with mental health, and brain injury, I would say, is very similar. Nobody brings you lasagna when your kid's in the hospital because they tried to commit suicide. And
Yeah.
people, so it
Oh.
changes the experience for caregivers. People don't understand why someone who, like in my position, why I had to fight like crazy for home care. And I've educated all of them, like the my care coordinator. And it's good to be in a small town because she went to school with my daughters. See, now that's
Mhm.
happening. My children's friends are taking care of us. But I explained to her how her assessment would really actually exclude us from care, because they ask questions like, can you bathe yourself?
Yeah.
Can you, so there's a lot of things that he can do. Of course, he can't do shopping or do the taxes or be alone or anything. But yeah, it is a little bit more difficult. I wanted to I see there's a few questions. Did you want me
Yes.
to look at those?
Sure. I think, well, there's a suggestion as well from Sheila. And she wants us to mention, and I'm so happy to do this, the Neighbors Helping Neighbors workshop, developed by the Victorian Order of Nurses. And the purpose is to provide information that would enable someone to support a primary caregiver and give them a break. It's an educational workshop. In Ottawa, it's offered for free by volunteers from the Ottawa branch of the National Association of Federal Retirees. And that's an association that my husband belongs to because he's a retired federal retiree.
Mhm.
And but the VON course is wonderful. Compassionate communities run through palliative care is another one. There are and these helpful ways and means of organizing neighborhoods to help families like yours, Sarah, mine, and those people who are listening today. These are under the radar oftentimes, and the only people who really know about them are other caregivers who've been doing
Yes.
it for a while. So
I want to mention one also, and again, I don't know. So when we were, when we had our LHINs, I know I have it here, but again, it was really under the radar. It's not advertised anywhere, but there is a program in the Champlain LHIN, and so it has to be available to those there. But I mean, I don't understand why it wouldn't be everywhere across Ontario, but it is a specific program called Caregiver Respite. How do you like that? I find out about this, I don't know how many years after. This particular program is about money. So they give, I think it's up to, I believe it's $2,500 a year for pretty much anything you want that they approve. So for example, they would pay for if the caregiver needed maybe some help with snow removal or lawn care or even their own therapy, or they would approve all kinds of different things. And they'll also talk with you and support you. They have a social worker there that'll talk to you and do some family counseling. So that, again, it's asking questions. Every time you talk to somebody, I always say, what else do you know? What else do you have? Do you know of anything else? Because that's how I finally, after we are 2017, Okay,
Mhm.
so it's been 6 years. I finally have the right help for my husband.
Yeah.
And it's like nobody knew. It was like the most complicated labyrinth. Like I must have walked around in circles, banging my head for
Mhm.
many years, but nobody else knew about it either. And like what Donna said earlier, I'm a social worker. As you can tell, I'm not shy. I know my way around a hospital. I know how to research. I know how to find things. And it took 6 years to find stuff. So it is hard, but I say things are out there, be creative, but talk a lot, ask everybody, tell people what you need.
Yeah. I will often suggest to caregivers too to think about the burden of care um, in terms of things that I want to do myself, things that I need a little bit of help with, and things that I really don't want to do, I want somebody else to
Mhm.
do. And pick 3 things. And depending on what stage of comfort you are to leave, like you might, you know yourself, Sarah, in year 1 of post-injury, you might not have wanted to leave and give a job to somebody else to do
Mhm.
completely. You
Mhm.
might have wanted only to pick 3 things you needed help with. So pick 3 things that somebody else could either help with or do themselves completely with a bit of training. And then figure out what's around you and who could possibly do these things. And sometimes it's not physical care for your person. Sometimes it's yard work, right?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
walking the dog or
yes.
doing grocery shopping. These are things that other people do all the time for themselves.
Mhm.
And they may have skills or equipment. They might own a snowblower and you don't.
You
So,
raise a very good point because a lot of people think, uh, oh, I don't know what to do, help you as a caregiver, because they're thinking of taking care of my husband. They're not thinking of cooking meals for me, housekeeping, like you said, lawn care, there's transportation's a big one too,
yes.
because,
Mhm.
there's so many things that have to be done. I could have I would personally like my own personal assistant, because there's just so many things you need help with. I did want to answer, there's 3 questions here.
Yes, yes.
One, and I'm not sure in which order they're coming, so please, oh wait, I'm gonna look at the time. Ha! Okay, is there a difference between home care provided by a family member and that provided by a professional? So I'm gonna say it really depends on what they're doing, because there could be no difference and there could be a great difference. So it depends what you need, like wound care or anything like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, you need to have the appropriate person. But if I need someone to sit with my husband while I go out and do groceries for a half an hour and an hour, then it could be, that's where I talk about having some of these volunteer programs through high schools. Like you could have somebody
Mhm.
in grade 12 come and sit
Sure.
there. Like it doesn't, so it really depends. And that question, RF, is such a good question, because when you realize that there are so many things and all the things that Donna listed that can be done, it opens it up that, oh, it doesn't have to be a PSW or a nurse. It could be. And then it could be, maybe you have a friend who has a daughter or a son who is studying to be a nurse or a PSW or a social worker and might like some experience, or they're doing a placement. Like there's a lot of possibilities. And it just opens your mind. So it depends but you do, I think the most important thing I would say, and then I'll let Donna address that, is you just have to have the right person for the right issue.
Yeah, it's true. And, a story that I often tell, regular listeners will have heard this before, is that sometimes, as you've said, matching the job to the person is so key. And I remember my dear mother-in-law, whom I adored, God bless her heart, she passed away years ago now. But when our son was little, he was very, very sick. He'd just had a major, major surgery, did not go well. And we were really struggling at home. And she said to me, So dear, if there's anything I can do, but I'm sure there's nothing I can do. And I was so
That's funny.
tired. I know. I was so tired. I said, oh, Jean, oh, no, you can't do like change the surgical dressings or anything, of course. But do you think you could make us a banana bread?
There you
She
go.
said, oh, I would love to make you a banana bread. I had given her a gift right
Yes.
there by
Yes.
giving her some way to help, because she just could not imagine what she could do that might make our situation better, because it was so medical, you
Yes.
know?
Yes.
But when I asked her that, she said, oh, yes, I can make you a banana bread every week. No problem. Thank you for telling me this and giving me this idea. But I know that we have so much chat going on here.
Yes.
Sarah.
There's
want
another
to,
question.
yes,
You, hang on here. How
I
can
know.
how can I find affordable 24-hour care for my elderly mom?
Mm,
I'm not sure I am the right person to answer that question.
yeah. Apart from
Like
a
private.
placement, private, yeah.
So I'm not sure, Crystal, if you were asking just to find it or if you were looking for funded. But as Donna said, other than placement, I think you're looking at, well, you said affordable. So I mean, you could call some of the private ones and see, and they might actually have ideas, because I'm sure they
Yeah.
get those questions all the time. I would probably start there.
Yeah. With my mom, we had the same question. And so we went to a geriatric counselor who was a finder of residential services for older adults. And my mom was a complicated person. She got evicted from her adult residence, like a Chartwell home or one of those. Her needs became very high, and she was a complicated person to help. She rejected a lot of the help that we found for her. So anyway, long story short, the case manager, and this was in Montreal, the case manager at the CLSC said, I know a lady who's like a fixer, and she works with families to find proper residential homes. And she ended up going to an assisted living home, which was privately owned, but that did the rebates with the government and everything like that. It turned out to be very affordable. There was only, I think, 15 women in this home, so small. It wasn't fancy, so it wasn't expensive. And it was perfect. It was perfect. So sometimes you can find somebody who is like your local fixer of big care problems. And every community has one of those people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would ask around in the caregiving community, when somebody in this community has a big urgent problem, who's your most helpful person?
Mm-hmm.
And go to that person.
There are in some hospitals, like we have one at our Cornwall hospital, we actually have a worker who provides supportive therapy to caregivers, and she's the go-to for you need something.
Yes.
I want to address, people have been commenting on the caregiver respite. So I want to make, and Christine put a link. So I want to tell you that there are two different, I guess, services and pockets of money. One is through home care. It's called caregiver respite. I get that. I get a PSW 3 hours a week for my husband through the pocket of money called caregiver respite. But the other program I was talking about was money. It was another program. It's also called caregiver respite. And that is things that are specific. It's not taking care of the the patient or the loved one. It's things that the caregiver decides they need. And so again, it was available in my area. I've talked to other caregivers across Ontario who've not heard of it. So I would, if you have a home care organization, it was through the old, and so it kind of exists. For us, it's not really part of home care. Like they know about each other, but it wasn't the same program. That's what I'm saying. These things get very complicated, and that's
Yeah,
what people who
patchwork.
see, I'm used to that. I'm used to knowing that I got to go around a whole bunch of stuff and I'm going to find my pot of gold. But it's really very, very complicated, and it shouldn't be. But let me just see now if there's other questions. Okay, we've got the caregiver. Do you think the long-term caregiving among family members affect the respectful relationship between care receiver and caregiver? The long-term caregiving among family members. I'm trying to.
Oh, I think I understand that
Okay.
question.
Okay.
Yeah. Dr. Zachary White and I co-wrote The Unexpected Journey of Caring, the transformation from loved one to caregiver. And this is a question that it interests me hugely. I think fundamentally, care needs, whether they happen suddenly or over time progressively, changes the relationship, and it changes us individually profoundly and permanently, whether you're receiving care or whether you're giving care. But over time, you will not ever go back to the person you were before you started caregiving. That's what I think. I'm pretty sure I know that to be true.
I think, yeah.
And it's not a bad change necessarily, although I do think a lot of caregivers do suffer from post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
And I think probably not having enough home help is part of that. So I do want to go to chat for a minute as well. And
can I
thank you for reading.
Answer that question just because?
Yes.
So, or respond to that question. So, do I think that it affects the respectful relationship between caregiver and care receiver? So yeah, so I mean, my mental health took a hit, and I had a lot of issues, and it was really hard, and I went through all kinds of, and I still do. It's a hard journey. I don't know in terms of the respect, though. I don't feel it hurts my relationship so much with my loved one, except for the fact that we've both lost. So I lost the husband that I had. He's not the same person. And then I had this revelation one day that I'm not the only one who lost here. He's lost the wife he used to have, because of this thing that happened to him changed us both. So like Donna said, there's no going back. You are permanently changed, but it is not all bad. Yes, it's awful. I'm not happy that happened. And I don't like, it was for a good reason and all that kind of stuff. No. Nobody really needs to suffer. But there are some things that have come out of it that are positive. And I hope that answered your question. And if it didn't, please feel free to ask again or get what you need.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to go to the chat and thank you for quarterbacking the Q&A, Sarah. And going to the chat, we've had lots and lots of discussion here. One question a while ago was about paying caregivers. And I can let everybody know, if you're not aware already, that the new Canadian Centre for Caregiving Excellence has a really fantastic initiative to kickstart a national strategy for caregivers in Canada that includes a policy proposal to compensate caregivers. And so there's a lot in that white paper. You can go to their website, and I'll ask Liv, who's here from continuing education, to find the the link for Canadian Centre for Caregiving Excellence, and they're having a summit in November coming up, where caregivers are subsidized to attend the conference virtually or in person, and there will be lots of opportunity to compare experiences and policy solutions for some of these big endemic problems. Anne mentioned in the chat that in Knoxville, Tennessee, there's a retired bus driver who started a service called Beautiful Bees Transport because she saw a need. You know, our daughter lives in the States, and I find in the United States, there is a huge culture of volunteerism. Excuse me, there's less of an expectation of publicly funded, solutions, but there are some great volunteer programs in Canada too, and some that we've imported from other countries. In terms of, like you said, the guys hanging out together, there's a thing called Men's Sheds that has become a program that is run by volunteers all over the world now. And their motto, something about shoulder to shoulder, I don't know, it's about men's mental health. And they hang out together and they fix things, which they love to do, in a shed. And they talk. And all of a sudden, they're feeling better. It's just a wonderful thing. And it's so organic and natural in supporting other men. So I think there are these programs. Again, you have to ask what's out there that might meet the needs in our family to help us be well. And somebody also mentioned, in finding these solutions that are informal, isn't it letting the government off the hook?
Yes, I've heard that. People have said that to me many times. But you know what I say? I've got so many battles to fight. What is the most important thing? Yeah. It's my husband's and my health. And that's what I need to do. Maybe it's letting them off the hook. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's showing them a model. Maybe it's, but that just kind of goes into that pot of what you were talking about before, feeling judged and whatever, it's, we have to do what we need to do. If I sat around waiting for the government to give me exactly what I want, I'm not going to be well.
Yeah.
But I want to work with them. And I think
yes.
Like in Ontario, what's nice is we have these Ontario health teams where there are caregivers involved. A lot of that's behind the scenes. So for those of you in the audience who may or may not know about that, for those of you that are in Ontario that may be interested in caregiving or people's lived experience impacting healthcare, find your local OHT. There's one in every area, and they are doing work. I know I'm involved in ours, and it's coming. I think while things are hard, I can feel just in my experience that really started in 2017. I mean, we didn't even say the word caregiver. Like that just wasn't even a word. I'd never heard of that till I started working on a project in, I think it was when did I start that project? I think 2016. And then we started using the word caregiver. So change, it's slow and it's quick. You become a caregiver very quick, but the world takes a bit of time to catch up to what you need. But we'll get there. We'll get there. We have to get there.
Yeah, we sure do. And Sarah, I think that's a wonderful place to end. I know we've got a few announcements, and then we're going to come back. And I know you have to go take care of your husband now and make sure that he has his lunch. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom and experience with us today. Sarah, it's just been such a pleasure talking to you. And I know we're going to have a rich conversation now, reflecting on your remarks as well. So over to you, Christine.
Oh, thanks, Donna. And I'm certain that people watching would agree that we're all impressed by Sarah's, creativity and resourcefulness. not only helping your husband, Sarah, but you too, making sure that you have your own self-care and sort of all of through your experience, you've shared that with others, and hopefully people will be inspired that they can find, the same sort of community support, because it sounds like that's what you've had to do, right? You've had to create this network, and that the network seems to work. So thank you for that. So yes, I definitely do have a few housekeeping. We started with housekeeping and we will end with housekeeping before we go to the unrecorded informal section. So just a reminder to everyone that this webinar series is part of the McMaster Continuing Education free online course called Caregiving Essentials. It runs every year, so it is just finishing up. I think it ends August 4th, but good news is it starts up again October 10th. So if you're a caregiver or you have a family or friend who is a caregiver, this course might be helpful. Not that lots of caregivers have tons of time for courses, but you don't make it hard, do you, Donna? It's a good course.
It's all in your own time. It's really stuff that many of us already know. It's everything from wills and estates to organizing medications and pain management, ethics. There are 4 modules, and you can go through it quite quickly, and it's designed to help people succeed. If you get perfect in the quizzes, you just keep doing them till you get it all perfect, and then you get a micro credential from McMaster Continuing Education, which says, I am a caregiver, I have these skills and knowledge, thank you very much, I can put this on my CV, my resume, frame it, stick it up on my wall, and caregiving has value. And McMaster Continuing Education sees that value, and it has a micro-credential, which is a fantastic thing.
And I'm also thinking too, like Sarah mentioned, when it first happened, how she was very overwhelmed. And so potentially taking this course before you get to that overwhelmed stage, maybe like you can kind of anticipate things and then
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So I know
Yes.
that has been some of the comments. I think I shared this before, that a coworker that I worked with shared with me. She loved the course and she said, oh, I wish I had taken it a little bit earlier. I mean, she still found it greatly invaluable. But yes, if you're sort of ahead of the game, then maybe once you are facing the issues that you're talking about, you feel a bit more confident, like, okay, I know this because I've learned about this. I can
Yes.
deal with it.
Yes, I don't know why anybody thinks that you could do caregiving, especially complex caring, without training. I mean, just understanding the systems and the way that they work, and how to do record keeping and information management. There are skills here that we usually have to learn by making mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And that just shouldn't be. So I know Dr. Lorraine Carter, the head of continuing education, feels so strongly that this course has to be free for everybody in the world who needs to know how to do caregiving and ease the burden of care, just by knowledge and helping people to feel competent and confident.
So maybe that's something people want to put in their calendars. October 10th it starts, and it runs till August. So like you said, right, you do the modules, you do them at your own pace. You have almost a year to do it. I guess that's like 10 months, I guess you have to do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it usually takes maybe a couple of weeks.
Yeah. And of course, I want to promote again the talk that you're doing, Donna, with Andre Picard. That is going to be sensational. That is September 28th. That's sort of kicking off, right? If the course starts October 10th, we want to do sort of a kickoff series with these webinars. And Donna is starting to line up speakers for this sort of webinar series. So, hopefully you can join us on September 28th. Before we leave, I do want to thank Donna, Sarah, and I. We come on and we just talk. Well, you guys just talk. I just do the intro. But it does take a number of people to help pull this together. And so I'd just like to thank Jennifer Rakowski, So she works with Donna in sort of organizing it all. And then sort of on the technical component, we have Dave Dawson, who I work with. He's sort of the IT master. We have Liv Tasson, who is from Continuing Ed, and she's putting in all of the links there for you. And another one of my colleagues, Shelly Jew, she is the one that does all the animations. So that little intro and the little outro is thanks to Shelly. And oh, one other thing I wanted to mention, because this is a webinar series, I think Liv is going to put in the chat, if you've missed any of the other previous webinars, we'll put the YouTube link, so you can go there and you can peruse. Potentially you've just started coming to these webinar series, and there's like another dozen on the YouTube channel, so you can look at those and see if there's a topic that might be helpful to you. And I think, have I missed anything, Donna? I think that's it. I think we'll take like a 30 or 45-second break. I think Sarah's going to leave, and then we'll stay on if people want to stay on for the informal part and do some chat through the chat thing. Does that sound
Yes.
good?
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Thank you, everyone.